Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about why we should prioritize rowing over chin-ups and pull-ups. And I have a long history of having done a lot of pull-ups and chin-ups, a lot of them weighted. I've gotten pretty strong on them. I've done lots of volume on them in the past. I've even given strength standards on the weighted chin-up. But when it comes to overall muscle balance, injury prevention, things like that, if you had to prioritize one over the other, I'm going to go in the direction of prioritizing rowing. And again, I had to put that first part in the disclaimer because a lot of times you'll have people who are like, oh, well, you just weigh a lot and you can't do pull-ups, they're hard. Well, no, I've done lots of pull-ups. I've done lots of pull-ups on camera. So it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that we're talking about developing overall muscle mass and particularly keeping your shoulders healthy. Rows bring more to the table, and it has to do with the angle of the pull. And if you want to do a bodyweight exercise or weighted bodyweight exercise, you can always do inverted rows. But when we look at it, overall back development, especially with something like a Pendlay row, which trains your posterior chain isometrically, which can help you learn to deadlift better, that alone brings something to the table you don't get from a pull-up. Okay, we have to set our hips and our posterior chain very similar to our setup position for a conventional deadlift. And it will actually literally help you learn to deadlift better. But that's not really the biggest reason. It has to do with overall development. So because a lot of the other rows that we would do would be stuff like chest supported rows, even potentially machine rows, inverted rows, things like that, they don't have a great deal of lower back or posterior chain involvement, and really none. But it has to do with the horizontal versus the vertical angle. And again, you might argue, well, hitting different angles is a good idea. And I tend to agree with that. But what rowing does that pull-ups do not do is the upper back. And the upper back and then parts of the shoulder girdle, they do not hit it as hard. What do I mean? Specifically things like posterior delts, rhomboids. Okay? Posterior delts do get worked a little bit on pull-ups, but not to the same degree. These muscles do not get worked to the same degree that they do on various types of rowing. And from an injury prevention perspective, that matters. And we know that people who focus and do lots and lots of chin-ups, and this has been research that's been looked at, who do very high volumes of chin-ups are actually prone to shoulder impingement. They're prone to shoulder impingement. And it's because we tend to get anterior dominant. In other words, if your front delts and your pecs get really, really, really strong, and you do not have the accompanying strength and muscle mass, because again, our strength comes from our hypertrophy primarily. 90% of our strength is determined by our actual hypertrophy relative to our leverages. Okay, so in this case, size equals strength for the most part. Then what happens is that it puts our shoulders into a compromised position easier to where we're more likely to get shoulder injuries due to instability. Okay? We're just likely to get that. Now, could a person come in and do lots of rear delt flies and things like that in addition to pull-ups and possibly be okay? Yeah, possibly so. But when we're training all those muscles with a higher emphasis with our big movements, we do tend to get more bang for our buck. And in fact, I would make the argument that if someone wanted really, really stable shoulders and they really want to build their rear delts, they should probably be doing rowing and rear delt work. Okay, because your entire upper trap, middle trap, rhomboids, rear delts, all of these muscles get worked much, much harder on a row. They get worked much harder on a row. And so now we're working these muscles much harder on our big primary exercises. All right, now you might ask, well, is it going to leave your lats lagging? No, probably not. Not if you're doing large volumes of these things, because the lats still get worked. The lats are still a primary mover. They're still a primary mover. And we could argue, because again, people say, well, maybe what about biceps are going to get less work? Well, yeah, that's true, except that if you do some of these things with a supine grip, if you do some of your rowing with a supine grip, biceps aren't being worked less than a chin-up. Okay, they're not being worked less than a chin up. You might have to use a lot of weight, like if you get really strong. Okay, so someone can do weighted chins, with 45 pounds for 10 reps. Yeah, you're going to have to do really, really heavy rows to work your chin ups to compete with that in a supine position. And I don't care whether you're doing a Pendlay row that way or an inverted grip row, but they'll still get worked. But here's what that comes down to. If your biceps are lagging and you feel that they need more work, you can always do curls. You can always do some curls. But I would recommend that you do some of your rowing underhand grip, like you saw me doing with the inverted rows there. Okay, that'll largely resolve that problem. And like I said, you can always add in some curls. But the whole point here is the focus on the upper back. Okay, the focus on the upper back. You're going to have a more stable shoulder girdle if you put more focus on rowing instead of pull-ups. You're going to be less prone to shoulder injury, because I will see people who don't do rows at all. And then therefore it tends to make you weaker too, because your upper back matters a lot. It matters a lot for setting up a good shelf to squat with. So it'll affect your barbell squats. It will affect your benching, right? People with a weak upper back don't usually have an ability to get a really good tight setup on the bench. Okay. Which will affect you just off the chest. So you're going to tend to be stronger overall. And I've had clients who came to me who had completely neglected their upper back, and they were really, really good at chins. I've had 2 clients like this who were very strong at weighted chins. They couldn't bench or squat, which surprised them, because they're like, I'm really strong on these chin ups. It's all the stabilizers that should be giving me everything I need to bench, and they couldn't. Same thing with being able to get a good setup on their squat. They just didn't have the upper back. They didn't have a good shelf to put the bar on, and it made getting tight and stable more difficult for them. Then we start doing lots and lots of rows, and then doing extra rear delt work and stuff like face pulls or whatever they needed. And then they had the stability in the upper back and shoulders to actually perform these lifts, and then they went up. But I've had at least 2 lifters like that who their chin up was their strongest exercise coming to me, and they couldn't perform the barbell lifts. And what I'm saying here is that I'm not telling you not to do pull-ups. If you have the shoulder health to do pull-ups and you're good at them and you like them, by all means you can do some weighted pull-ups. All I'm saying is you can't de-emphasize rowing for it. That when it comes down to overall development and strength, rowing is going to bring a little more to the table. So if you want to do pull-ups, that's fine, but make sure that you are doing both. Make sure that you are doing both. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.